Resume writing tips. 7. Describe your accomplishments in terms of results, not responsibilities. Now, this is something that all the resources seem to agree on. So think about making your bullets meet the following 3 criteria. The bullets should be relevant, relative, and results-oriented. You can think of this as the 3R model. So make sure that your bullets communicate the responsibilities that your future employer is looking for. You need to do this anyway to get past the ATS filter or initial screener. So here's an example of what I mean by aligning your bullet points with the responsibilities. If one of the stated responsibilities is to retain and grow revenue with our largest mid-market partners, your bullet might sound something like this. Drove 85% client retention for a book of 37 mid-market accounts and surpassed account growth targets by 55% in 2019. So note how the language is a reflection of the initial job posting here. Now, not every bullet on your resume has to directly align with a specific keyword or set of keywords mentioned in the job description, but a lot of them should. Probably the majority should. Another test that your bullets should pass is the test of relativity. This refers to how your results stand up to a standard measure of performance. So when it comes to bullets on a resume, the more quantifiable they are, the better. Try to think of ways to articulate your achievements that's tangible. So tangible value statements that will resonate immediately with the recruiter. So let's just say you led a project that streamlined the workflow for a process inside of a company. How much time did that actually save for each person involved in the process? How much did those people get paid? And what is that time worth? You can figure that out and you can make that quantifiable. Now, it's important that all this being said, that you don't overinflate your achievements. The more extraordinary that your achievements sound, the more recruiters and interviews are likely to ask you to explain them. So make sure that you can support your claims. You're confident that you have a good enough grasp or understanding of exactly what you've done that you can sell it. And finally, your bullets must focus on results, not responsibilities. The recruiter will be looking for evidence that you'd excel at the role that you are applying for, rather than just meet expectations. The assumption is that if you've gotten this far in the process, you meet basic criteria. But you want to make sure that you go beyond basic expectations. So you'll need to highlight achievements from your experience that make you stand out and give the recruiter a sense of how you'd handle the role you're applying for. So let's move on to number 8. Prioritize the information that is most relevant to the job you're applying for. This probably sounds really obvious. So let's just say you're applying for an entry-level communication position and you're running out of space on your resume. You can include either your recent experience as a Subway sandwich artist or your volunteer experience as campaign communication strategist for a candidate in the last federal election. even though that position only lasted 4 months and was roughly 3 years ago. Okay, so what do you do? Well, it would be far more relevant to communicate the position as a communication strategist, obviously. But sometimes we can get caught up in our ideas of what predetermined guidelines we feel we might need to follow for a resume. So this is one of the things you need to strategize when you decide on the format of your resume. How are you going to present your qualifications? Okay, skills and certifications. Dedicating an area of your resume to highlight particular skills or specialized training you possess can provide readers with additional information about your capabilities that wouldn't naturally fit anywhere else on your resume. And this might be particularly important for you if this is your first main job in this field. And for many of you, this is going to be perhaps one of your early communication jobs. You should only include the skills that are both relevant to the role and those that the recruiter wouldn't reasonably assume you already have, though. Generally speaking these days, every employer will expect that you know how to use software like Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint at some sort of like a basic proficiency level. Certainly this would be expected in a communications position. So it's not necessarily necessary to explicitly mention them in your resume. So Dan Clay's book, How to Write the Perfect Resume, suggests that you use the following designations to indicate your skill level of proficiency in a certain software. He suggests intermediate, so this is top 50% expertise. You know how to do more with the software than 50% of people with at least a basic proficiency level. Advanced, top 75% expertise. You know how to do more with the software than 95% of the people who have a basic proficiency level. Expert, top 95% expertise. You know how to do more with the software than 95% of people with at least a basic proficiency level. So education, we should touch on that probably. In general, and I believe I had a list before that suggested that education should come at the bottom of your resume. And the reason for this is that this is what recruiters generally expect to see on a resume. This might be one of the first things that they're going to look at, but usually it comes at the end of your resume. Now, you are right out of university, so it's usually acceptable to flip that. If you're applying for your first job out of university, you can include your education information at the top of your resume. Recruiters will understand that you likely won't have the breadth of professional experience that seasoned professionals might. So that, again, this is something that you have to balance. Do you want to draw attention to that, or do you just want to go with that and make sure that you're highlighting your qualifications as best you can? You should include every degree you've obtained in order of most advanced to least advanced, down to your bachelor's degree. But you'll want to think about how much information you want to include based upon how relevant it is to the position. The more relevant your education to the role for which you're applying, the more you should emphasize this section on your resume. There are two ways that you can present your education. You can use a compact or an expanded format. For most of you, you'll want to use an expanded format because you're likely earlier on in your career. So Simply put, the expanded format puts more emphasis on your education. So you will display the pieces of education information on separate lines so that you can highlight and expand more on that part of your resume.